Okay, Assalamualaikum, good day everyone. So today we are going into the next part of 1.2. This will be the last part for 1.2 actually. So in previous video, you have learned on how to write and draw the structural formula. So by now you should know that there are three structural formula involved. Kita ada expanded structure where all the bonds must be shown, and then kita ada juga condensed structure where we omit all the bonds tapi ada certain things yang kita kena tunjuk. For example macam carbon-carbon double bond, carbon-carbon triple bond. Okay, so meaning double bond dengan triple bond untuk carbon tu kena tunjuk, tapi double bond carbon dengan atom yang lain selain daripada carbon kita boleh tunjuk, tak tunjuk pun tak apa. Okay, and then we also learn on the skeletal structure where kita tak nampak dah carbon dekat dalam skeletal structure tu, we only see the bonds sahaja, and even the hydrogen that bonded to the carbon pun tak nampak juga, except for other things yang macam COOH, OH, halogens and other stuff yang tu kita akan nampakkan. Okay, that is from the previous video. But now let's go to the last part of the structural formula whereby kita nak belajar how to classify the carbon and also how to classify the hydrogen, okay, dalam organic compound yang ada. Okay, so now kita tengok dahulu classes of carbon atom. So as you can see here, it only involve saturated carbon. Okay, so saturated carbon kat sini kita tak belajar lagi sebenarnya. Saturated carbon ni kita akan belajar in 1.4 nanti. Okay, tapi Miss bagi tahu awal lah apa dia saturated carbon. Cara senang Miss nak bagi tahu kamu adalah carbon ni dia involve single bond sahaja. Okay, they involve single bond saja. Keliling dia semua single bond. So there's no multiple bonds, no double bond, no triple bond bonded to the carbon yang kita nak classify tu. Okay, so make sure that the carbon consists of 4 single bonds. Baru kita boleh classifykan carbon tersebut, and that is what we call as the saturated carbon lah, where the carbon involve 4 single bonds. Okay, so a carbon atom can be classified as, so ada 4 classification dia. So the first one is what we call as the primary carbon. Okay, so primary carbon is a carbon that bonded to only one carbon atom. So dalam sesuatu organic compound ada banyak carbon, kan? Okay, tapi kamu fokus dengan carbon yang kamu nak classify tu, and then tengok sekeliling dia ada berapa banyak carbon yang attached dengan dia. So in the case of this one, if it is bonded to only one carbon atom, okay, therefore that particular carbon adalah primary carbon. Okay, and then kita tengok pula secondary carbon. So kalau secondary carbon pula bermaksud the carbon is bonded to 2 carbon atoms. Okay, and then kalau tertiary carbon pula, meaning the carbon is bonded to 3 carbon atoms. And kalau untuk quaternary carbon, meaning it attached to 4 carbon atoms. Okay, so let's have a look lah apa maksud sebenarnya yang bonded 1 carbon, 2 carbon, 3 carbon ni. Okay, so kita tengok contoh dia. Okay, so for example primary carbon here. Okay, so focus on the red carbon. Okay, the red one. Okay, so as you can see, this red carbon here, it consists of 4 single bonds. Okay, but then dia attached kepada 1 carbon atom sahaja. Therefore, this carbon here yang warna merah ni, itulah yang dianggap sebagai primary carbon. So apa benda lah yang attached dekat tepi-tepi ni? So dekat sini, it can be other things lah. It can be oxygen, it can be nitrogen, it can be sulfur and so on. Okay, benda-benda yang selain daripada carbon or even hydrogen. Okay, so mungkin ketiga-tiga kat sini adalah hydrogen, tapi ada satu yang attached dengan this carbon here adalah carbon. Therefore, that is considered sebagai primary carbon. Okay, so kalau kita tengok pula untuk secondary carbon, meaning there's 2 carbon attached to it. So kita focus on the red carbon here. So as you can see, it attached to 2 carbons here. Therefore, the red carbon here is considered as the secondary carbon. Okay, so whereby 2 single bonds dekat sini pula, it can be other elements hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, sulfur and so on. Okay, apa-apa aja lah selain daripada carbon. So since this carbon here attached to two carbons, therefore this is considered as secondary carbon. Okay, so I think by now you should be able to understand this. So tertiary carbon meaning it consists, the red carbon is attached to the three other carbons. Okay, so this one here dia adalah considered tertiary. Tapi the next one quaternary. So quaternary meaning ada 4 carbon atoms yang attached to carbon tersebut. So as you can see, sekeliling dia semuanya adalah carbon. Therefore, this red carbon here is considered as quaternary. Okay, untuk kita punya red carbon ni. Okay, so to test your understanding, okay, so you can try this question here. 7.0 indicate and state separately the classes of carbon atoms in the following molecule. Okay, so in this diagram here, try to classify. So lukis balik structure ni, lukis balik the whole structure, and then kamu tulis yang macam Miss buat tadi. Tulis specifically dekat setiap carbon tu apa dia punya class. Okay, sama ada dia adalah primary, secondary, tertiary or quaternary. Tak perlu tulis dalam bentuk ayat, boleh guna nombor tu tadi dengan degree sign tu. Itu dah okey dah. Okay, so itu adalah untuk kamu classifykan dia. So apa Miss nak cakap tadi? Jadi make sure focus on bila kamu nak classify sesuatu carbon tu, pilih satu carbon dahulu, focus on that carbon, and then tengok ada carbon lain tak attach dengan dia. Okay, and then kalau ada, kira berapa banyak yang ada. Okay, so nanti kamu try to classify this one. Okay, and satu lagi adalah try this 8.0. Okay, so this one is a bit different compared to the previous try this. So sini dia bagi tahu indicate and state separately the number of primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary carbon atoms in the following molecule. Meaning what you have to do is again copy balik the compound. Okay, copy balik the whole compound here and then try to classify setiap satu carbon yang ada. Okay, and then kamu buat jawapan tambahan kat bawah tu pula, bagi tahulah number of primary carbon berapa banyak. Okay, number of secondary carbon ada berapa banyak. Okay, and make sure total number yang kamu letak kat situ nanti adalah sama banyak dengan berapa total number of carbon yang ada dalam ni. Jangan pula tiba-tiba terlebih banyak ataupun terkurang carbon dalam tu. Okay, so make sure kalau ada 8 carbon dalam ni, make sure nanti kamu just to double check your answer. This is just to double check your answer. Soalan tak minta pun. So kamu just double check balik, tengok betulkah ada 8 total tu nanti. Okay, tapi basically classify dahulu each carbon in the compound, and then you just have to state the number of primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary. Okay, so this is for classes of carbon atom. So let's go to the next one. Kita pergi kepada kejap, sebelum kita pergi kepada classification of hydrogen. Okay, so please take note that no classification for carbon atoms in methane and in multiple bonds. Miss rasa multiple bonds ni Miss dah terangkan tadi. Carbon yang involve double bond, triple bond, kita tak boleh classify. Okay, kita cuma boleh classify yang saturated tadi kan. Saturated meaning dia cuma ada single bond sahaja. Tapi kalau benda yang involve multiple bonds, no, tak boleh. Kita tak boleh classify kan dia. So kita tengok contoh. So methane ni, kenapa methane ni kita tak boleh nak classify carbon yang ada dalam tu? Because I think you should know now, kalau meth meaning there's only one carbon atom. Okay, and methane ni dia ada satu carbon atom and sekeliling dia semuanya adalah hydrogen. So kalau semua adalah hydrogen, tak ada carbon langsung sekeliling dia. So how to classify this carbon then? Okay, so there is no classification untuk carbon yang ada dalam kita punya methane ni. Okay, sebab semua ni hydrogen. Okay, and satu lagi adalah contoh kita ambil alkene. Okay, so situ dia letak primary tu kan, no, andue. Okay, bukan jawapan dia tu sebenarnya. Okay, so this one 2-butene pula. Kita tengok 2-butene. Okay, so 2-butene bermaksud sebab ni butene E kan. E meaning ada double bond. So as you can see double bond kat sini. Okay, tapi ada 4 carbon dalam ni. Okay, so carbon yang ada double bond adalah this one here and this one here. Okay, tapi yang ni ada tak double bond dengan dia? Yang ni ada tak double bond dengan dia? So tak ada. So kalau tak ada, kita boleh classifykan dia. So since carbon ni dia cuma attached with one carbon, therefore it is a primary. Okay, meanwhile this carbon pula it only attached to one carbon, therefore it is also primary. But then kita guna 2-butene lagi. Adakah kita punya carbon yang ni dan carbon yang ni, adakah dia adalah secondary? Kenapa secondary? Sebab kononnya this carbon here dia attach dengan carbon yang atas ni, and also dia attach dengan carbon yang sebelah kanan dia ni. Okay. Meanwhile carbon yang kanan ni pula dia attach dengan carbon sebelah kiri, satu carbon, and then dia attach dengan carbon yang bawah ni, dua carbon. So that is why ni secondary. Bolehkah? No. Tak boleh. Okay. Because we cannot, again sekali lagi Miss nak emphasize, we cannot classify carbon yang involve multiple bonds. Okay, we can only classify carbons yang involve single bond sahaja yang kita panggil sebagai saturated carbon. Okay, so ini untuk kita punya carbon atom. Okay, so kita nak tengok pula classification of hydrogen atom. So kalau tadi carbon ada 4 classes, primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary. So adakah hydrogen ada 4 juga dia punya kelas? So let's have a look. So depending on the type of carbon atom that the H atom is attached to, okay, so you can classify the hydrogen punya class. Okay, so hydrogen atom attached to the primary carbon atom, that is the primary hydrogen. Okay, so hydrogen atom attached to the secondary carbon atom, that is the secondary hydrogen. So kalau hydrogen atom attached to the tertiary carbon atom, that is considered sebagai tertiary hydrogen. Jadi, in order for you to classify hydrogen, you first need to classify the carbon yang attached dengan that particular hydrogen. Okay, so let's say the carbon adalah primary. Bermaksud hydrogen yang attached dengan carbon tersebut, it is also primary. Okay, let's say the carbon is secondary. Bermaksud hydrogen yang attached dengan carbon tersebut adalah secondary juga. Okay, so it depends on the carbon ke carbon. Maksud yang penting kat sini adalah for you to know how to classify the carbon lah. Okay, once you know how to classify the carbon, automatically you should be able to classify the hydrogen as well. Okay, so kat sini kita tengok ada 3 classes of hydrogen. So ada tak quaternary hydrogen? So kita tengok. Okay, so as you can see here, this carbon, red carbon here, that is considered quaternary carbon. Why? Because it attached to 4 carbons atom here. Okay, so kalau dia dah dikelilingi dengan carbon sahaja, okay, there are no such thing as quaternary hydrogen because tak ada hydrogen kat situ kan? Mana ada hydrogen kat situ? So there is no such thing as quaternary hydrogen. So quaternary hydrogen tak wujud pun. We only have primary, secondary and tertiary. Okay, so now it's your turn to try. So try this 9.0. So how many primary, secondary, tertiary hydrogen in the following alkane? So yang ni classifykan dahulu. Okay, the hydrogen. Once kamu dah classify hydrogen tu nanti, and then bagi tahu, okay, state how many primary hydrogen yang ada. State how many secondary hydrogen. State how many tertiary hydrogen yang ada. Tapi first thing before kamu nak identify the classes of hydrogen, again, classify dahulu the carbon. Okay, and then now let's have a look at try this 10.0. Okay, so try this 10.0 ni kenapa tiba-tiba dia warna biru kan? Okay, this is because I think I've included answers for try this 10.0 ni. So nanti kamu boleh buat sendiri and terus check your own answer on this. Okay, so you just need to classify the hydrogen in each of the following molecule. So just label at the hydrogen atom. Okay, so as you can see here, this hydrogen here ada 3 kan? Okay, so it attached to the same carbon here. So tak perlulah kamu nak classify sampai 3 kali. Okay, cukup just letak je apa kelas dia kat sini. Okay, okay, so Miss tolong lah yang ni. Okay, so this hydrogen here, dia attach dengan this carbon kan? So this carbon here nak kena classifykan dululah. So this carbon here, dia attach dengan satu sahaja carbon. Therefore, this carbon is primary carbon. So, kalau dia adalah primary carbon, automatically the hydrogen yang attach kepada dia is also primary hydrogen. Okay, jadi nanti kamu try lah buat untuk semua ni. Okay, so try to classify untuk semua hydrogen ni nanti. So, same goes to this part here. Tolong classifykan juga. Okay, and last kali, so state the type of carbon atoms present. Ni pergi balik kepada classes of carbon atom lah. Ini Miss nak tengok balik carbon atom kamu tu, kamu faham ke tidak? So state the type of carbon atoms present in the following molecular structure. So soalan ni sebenarnya dia tanya, classify each carbon yang ada dalam ni. Kalau possible. Kalau boleh classify. Adakah yang tak boleh? That is for you to find out. Okay, so we're done with topic 1.2. So don't forget to submit your try these questions. So that's all. Just to recap balik the things that we have learned in this video. So you have learned two things. The first one is classification of carbon atoms. Okay, so focus on one carbon atom and then just tengok balik sekeliling dia. Ada berapa banyak carbon. Kalau ada satu carbon, meaning that is a primary carbon. Kalau ada dua carbon, secondary carbon. Kalau ada 3 carbon yang attach dengan dia, that will be tertiary. Dan kalau ada 4 yang attach dengan dia, that will be quaternary. Okay, whereas kita punya classification for hydrogen pula, so hydrogen punya class, it depends on the carbon punya class. Kalau hydrogen tersebut attach dengan secondary carbon, bermaksud class of hydrogen tersebut adalah secondary juga. Okay, so I think that's all. Okay, just keep in your mind that the only carbon that you can classify is saturated carbon only. Okay, so thank you. Bye bye.